And Mick, thank you so much for coming. Mick is an international artist, and as you can see on the set, we have a lot of different things going on here. And anybody who's watched the show knows that I try to do a lot of research. And when I was researching, it was like, wow, there's a lot here. There's a lot here. There's sculptures, and there's painting, and there's painting sculptures, and there's, what else do we have? Bronze, and you've done statues, and so everything. Yep. So give us a summary of just kind of like the elevator pitch that you give to people, you know, like what is it when people are like, so what are you about? What comes out first?
Usually I say I'm a sculptor or painter. Mm-hmm. I don't come out and say, and they'll go, oh, you're an artist. I'm like, yeah, I'm an artist.
You're a sculptor and a painter, okay.
Wake up every day and I live and breathe the life, and you know, it's a roller coaster ride. Mm-hmm. And going on 20 years of doing this professionally. So I do wear a lot of hats, so it depends on the question, the person, and how I answer that. Mm-hmm. Or I just say, hi, I'm Mick.
Yeah, or what project do you have going on at the time, or where your head is at that time?
If I know somebody, they usually say, you know, they ask me about, you know, what are you working on now? You know, or I just saw this piece, or I need to get to that place.
Mm-hmm. Right. Yeah. And so 20 years. So what did you do prior to that?
Oh, geez. You know, after I didn't take art in high school, I learned how to build houses or residential construction, and then I went to JC, junior college, which is now community college, and that's when I kind of took my first art course. And I didn't end up going to class that often, so I didn't. I made it about a year and a half, and my teachers were like, yeah, you get the work done, but you never here. So I don't think they like that. But my work ethic has always been strong, so I always did the work. Yeah. And I got good grades, but they didn't feel they could grade me properly because I wasn't showing up, and they're like, why do you need me as a teacher? And
right, so, you're just doing stuff, yeah.
Yeah.
So what is it about art that clicked with you?
Well, I think we're all, I mean, as children, you know, as we grow older and to that time of crayons and our parents put our pictures on the refrigerator, I think it's kind of, for the majority of us, there's a point in our life where we do a little of that scribbling or whatever, and the children's art that is so amazing. Some of it is, you look at it and I go, God, where do you get back to that innocence? You know, Picasso said it took him a lifetime to learn how to paint like a child. And so I think we all have that, and then we either grow out of it, or we step away from it, and we come back to it. And some people say, well, I have to get a real job. Your parents say, well, you know, you can't do this, you can't make a living doing this. Or so I guess there's a lot of factors that play into.
There's a reason why the term starving artist is a fairly common term.
Yeah, I use famished.
Yeah. You've done a lot of really big projects. So for some of the people that aren't familiar with your work, I mean, you've been to the Vatican, you've personally handed something to the Pope. You know, talk about those, like talk about where's your art now that is at the Vatican, and what was that?
Well, I was on a journey, went to Italy for my first time in 1995, and that's where I decided I was going to spend my 30th birthday in Europe, and God, I just kind of dated myself, didn't I? Anyways, so
I know I'm comparing our ages. I'm like, oh, was I 95?
And didn't know anything about St. Francis, and ended up at my friend's relatives that lived in Italy, and he's a Reformed minister in a Catholic country, and
so Christian Reformed Church.
Christian Reformed Church, yep. And Reverend Terry Atkinson, and God rest his soul, he just passed away a year ago. He was one of my dearest friends. But he introduced me to the home of St. Francis in Assisi, which is about an hour from there. And so that's how the journey started, and that's about an hour and a half story. So I won't get into the details of that.
You can give us the cliff notes of it. Okay. So you went to St. Francis of Assisi, and you...
he just captivated my heart. I didn't know
anything
about him.
There was something there, yeah.
And I was, so through Reverend Terry telling me about the joy that he gave up in following in the footsteps of Christ, just inspired me to learn more about him. So I got books, and then me and my wife Susan went back there in '98, I think, and we went back to the first church at San Damiano that he rebuilt. And so that's kind of where it all happened. And then I end up doing, jump ahead 10 years, in the process, I did a statue of Francis rebuilding the church. It's him holding a stone up in the air. And I did 16 bronze statues for the Basilica of St. Francis in 2004. And at that time, I was asked by the Vatican if I would present one of my bronze statues to Pope John Paul II, who's been the only Pope of my generation.
Right, he was there a long time.
Yeah, and so I knew for like 2 weeks, because the exhibition was for a whole month. I was there every day, meet and greeting people from all over the world. Couldn't speak the same languages all the time, but we communicated through hugs and smiles and often tears. And
these 16 statues were?
Of St. Francis, telling his story.
Okay.
If people know the life of Francis, or they know a little bit about him, he was the guy with the bird on the shoulder, or the animal lover. But that's just a small part of his story. So when I started learning about Francis, I wanted to tell more of his story than just those.
Are these part of it? Or, okay,
Yep.
So of that story, like explain what these are. Like these are part of the journey, part of the 16.
Yep.
So what are these two specifically?
This is the first one I did, and this is Francis on the road. And so he's got a full head of hair, he's got sandals on, and he grew up in a wealthy home, and he found Christ in this abandoned church at San Damiano, and everybody thought he was crazy giving up all this wealth and dressing in rags. And so he doesn't even know what he's doing. He's just like, I've got to do something here.
He's like, it feels right. Yeah.
Yeah, and drove his parents crazy, and
they're like, but wait, you're going to be a dentist.
No, Francesco.
Yeah, so this was the first one you did, and it was part of your journey too, in doing 16 of these. So as you're doing this first one, like what are you really thinking about? I mean, you're thinking of what he was doing at that time and what he's wearing, but what really stands out to you about this piece in particular, and areas that you did that were particularly meaningful to you, or you spent a lot of time on, whether it was his cheekbones, or you spent a lot of time on what the robe looked like, or because it had a significance to you?
Well, there's a lot of that goes, the technical part of the folds and the texture, and like you said, the cheekbones, and when you smile, your cheekbones raise, So, I mean, all those things you have to take in consideration that goes along with the emotion that I'm trying to capture of, not necessarily channeling Francis at that moment, but there is a point when I'm working, it's almost like praying without knowing it, that this spirit overtakes me. Because I'll go back and look at a piece and I'll go, how did I do that? Where did that energy come from? It was an energy, is it a spirit? And then when I was working on all these for the Basilica, I had like a year. They invited me to do, it was my third exhibition in Italy, and they invited me to do, I was the first American artist to be invited to the Basilica of St. Francis. And so they gave me like 7 months to produce this. So I was selling inventory to pay for all the materials. And it was just 14-hour days to get these done. Then I have to figure out how to ship them over there.
Right.
And so I was working on
and
more
you're trying to be creative, and you're trying to be inspirational and all this. It's not just, not just, okay, you got to pack these boxes, or we got to put together 100 widgets. It's like each one has to have its own spirit, its own personality. Yeah.
So I was working on a lot of them at the same time.
Yeah.
So it wasn't like I'd work on one and get it done, work on another. I was jumping back and forth.
Because they'd have stages that took time.
Yeah. And then I'd have other projects that would come in. I'd have to put it aside for a while and work on that because it was a commission piece. I got to do it so I can get paid and fulfill my obligations.
Right. So
there's a lot of hats that go into to keeping it all in order.
Yeah. So what were the steps in making this? I mean, I'm seeing the well, piece of fuzz, piece of ancient fuzz
A
on
leaf.
there. But you know, the stones he's walking on and the robe and all that, like what, from the beginning, do you do something where you carve it in soap first, or you know, like how do you, what's your
Chocolate.
process with this?
It's all sculpted in chocolate.
And then once you're done with it, you give it to your wife. Here, honey. Here, eat St. Francis. It's for you.
No, it's done in clay or wax, and then I have to make a silicone mold over that.
So you do clay or wax,
Yep.
and then you put
Yeah.
the silicone
Yep, it's
over
a
it.
two-part process that you have to mix up, and there's
Yeah.
all kinds of technical things that I've learned with parting lines, so you can take it apart where the hand doesn't come off or break. And so depending on the piece, like this piece was just a two-part mold, so I could come across here and go down. So there'd be one side that would pull out like this, one would come out like this. Now this one's a little more intricate because he's got a foot up in the air and he's walking, he's got this stick. So this one was a series of molds that I had to do, and then when I recast it, I put it back together. And so when it's cast in bronze, it has to get to a point of wax and hollow. And I should have brought a piece of wax out, then I could have been showing you right now. I'm sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
But it would look just like this, but it'd be real dark brown wax, and it'd be hollow inside, and it would have all the detail. And then that goes to the foundry, and they dip it in the slurry and sand, and they do that about 12 times.
So this is once the bronze is already cast.
No, this is before the bronze.
Oh, this is before the bronze.
I know.
Okay.
I remember the first time someone explained it to me, I'm like, what?
Yeah. So you have, and I'm trying to like simplify it as much as possible.
Okay, all right.
But you have the clay that looks like this.
Yep.
And so you goop the stuff on,
Yep.
and you know where your seams are.
Yep.
So you goop the stuff on, the silicone hardens.
Captures the detail.
You separate it,
Yep.
and then you have these two pieces of silicone.
Then you put it back together,
Yes, so you put it back together.
melt the wax. Now I have to have a big chunk of wax.
Oh, okay, the original wax that you use.
Nope, a different
Oh,
wax.
different piece of wax. So you
Yep.
take a different piece of
Yep,
wax.
melt it, and then you pour it into that mold. I turn that mold upside down.
Okay, so into the silicone.
Yep.
You dump it into the silicone.
Yep.
Okay.
And then you gotta like slash it around because you only want it to get so thick. So you kind of rotocast it, they call it, slush casting, and then you take that mold apart, and now you have this.
Once the wax cools.
Yep, once
Yep,
it cools,
okay.
then I take that mold back apart, and I take it out, and now I have this. It looks like chocolate.
But it doesn't taste like
right,
it.
no. And it has all the detail, but it's hollow inside. And then, because a bronze you don't want solid, for weight,
Yeah.
and then two, if it's solid mass, it would be so much bronze it would shrink. Not so much you might notice it, but
Yeah.
you don't need bronze inside. It's just even the big bronze statues like
Yeah, they're just like they're a shell.
yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
So you have the wax one.
Yep.
So then what do you do then?
Then that goes to the foundry.
Okay.
And I had my own foundry that a friend of mine did. He helped me when we did all the stuff for the Basilica. But I've learned that I just take it to a foundry now, and they know what
Easier.
they're yeah.
Right.
Well, because I have to spend my time on the creating part of it.
Right.
And
right.
I would say maybe 5% of sculptors probably cast their own.
yeah.
If they have the means.
Yeah.
They need to hire a crew to do it anyways.
Yeah.
So it's the same
Good
thing.
to delegate. Good
Yeah.
delegation.
Oh, yeah. It's not always easy, but.
Yeah.
So then that goes to the foundry, and then they dip that in a slurry, and they basically build a ceramic mold over it, over this wax. And then that goes
Okay.
into an oven at 2,000 degrees, and all that wax melts out.
Okay. And so what you have left is a ceramic mold now.
Yep.
So initially you had a silicone mold.
Yep.
And now you have the exact same thing but in ceramic.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. And now after that wax melts out, there's an empty void inside that ceramic, and then they have these ingots of bronze. They melt, and that gets up to about 2,200 degrees. And when that melts, you have to pour quick before it cools off, and that pours in, and it just fills.
Fills everything.
Yeah.
In the ceramic.
Yep.
And so it doesn't, so the ceramic can take it. Like it doesn't.
Yeah. You can't. You can
Yeah.
break ceramic,
Yeah.
but you can't burn it. It looks
Okay.
it's white,
Yeah.
but it looks like snow, but it's so hot it would after the bronze goes in there.
Right. And do you have to do the sloshing thing with that too somehow?
Nope, that just goes in because you only have like 15, 20 seconds to pour that in before
okay.
it cools off, and then
Okay.
after that cools off, then you pound this ceramic shell
and then
off.
you break it.
Yep.
Huh.
And then you have to sandblast it until it gets to the bronze.
Huh. So you sandblast it to get whatever ceramic fragments are left.
Yep.
Okay. To get that off.
Yeah.
Huh.
And
And so then your mold is gone. So if you wanted to do another one, you have to do the whole process over again.
Recast it. Yep.
So each one you need to have a unique
each one.
ceramic cast
Yeah,
for.
each one. Even though you can make duplicates, because I have the silicone mold, each one, it's.
So the silicone mold is reusable.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. You know, won't probably last forever, but it'll last a while. Silicone is just one of the rubbers. You can use other rubbers that won't last as long, but silicone is the best, so I always use those. Yeah. And then, like, if I wanted to adjust his head, like if someone wanted one, and they're signed and numbered, then I can turn his head a little bit. You know, someone said, well, I have one of them that looks kind of similar, but it's different. Or the same, but different.
Yeah. So to do that, if you're going to do one that's a little bit different, you have, like, how do you do that? You don't have to start all over.
No, because I have that silicone mold, so I remelt more wax, pour it into the mold, and then before it goes to the foundry, I can make any adjustments I want.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
So you can turn their head, you can put a bird on his shoulder, you can, all that. Okay. Cool.
Yeah.
All
so
right.
it's a process. And
Yeah.
the bronze is kind of like the pinnacle of, I think, of in the art world, because once it's cast in bronze, unless you can get up to 2,200 degrees, you're not gonna.
Right, it's there.
It's not gonna. Yeah.
The most damage is when people touch it. You know, like I remember being at Lincoln's grave, and there's a bronze statue of him at the grave site, and at his crypt, and like you can tell where people have touched it, because like they touch his nose and they touch his hand, because it's all rubbed like shiny.
Yeah, because bronze is gold. I mean, it's a real, almost looks like gold. And then there's a patina that goes on after that gives it that brown or the green. And then as if it's outdoors in the elements, over the years it might turn green, you know, because of
like the Statue of Liberty.
Yeah, because of the copper, the copper in it.
Yeah, like the Statue of Liberty,
oxidized.
which originally was not green.
Yeah.
Now she is, but she wasn't originally. So what is this one? Which place is this in the 16?
And then this is
there?
almost at the end of his life. It's called Palanca. It's a Spanish word, but it means lever. He's just back in this joy, and they say that Francis was the first to receive the stigmata, which is the wounds of Christ.
Oh, okay. And I can see, I can see him in here.
And
the little holes.
As on his journey over, his short life, he just always wanted the acceptance that he did the right thing, and so he traveled to Mount Laverna and spent 40 days fasting, and this is when he received the stigmata. This was in the 13th century. He died in 1226, and they say ever since Francis is like the first known stigmatist, and then after him, there's maybe been 300-400 cases that I caught a documentary on the History Channel, and
it just happens spontaneously.
To very
like it's just
devout, and there's never been a they've done trying to do scientific proof. Did they do this? Did the wounds start from the inside? And they just, because there's never been an eyewitness to this miracle.
To the process,
so it's baffling for sure.
Yeah. So you had the 16, and then you were invited to the Vatican.
Correct. Yep. To present one to Pope John Paul.
One of your pieces.
Yep.
Okay.
Yep. So I picked out Francis rebuilding the Church of San Damiano, because that's where it started.
You already had it.
Yep. It was in Italy. One of the 16.
Okay.
And I mean,
so
it's
one of this size.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, they're costly, so it was a nice gift.
Yeah.
So, but what are get an opportunity like
right,
this?
To give it to the Pope.
Yeah, sure.
Right.
Does he want to?
Yeah. Right. Do you want all 16? Just tell me where. I'll set them up. They'll look good.
And so we were on our way to Rome. We got our hotel in Vatican City there, and my friend Andrea, he's a photographer that had his artwork displayed behind my statues. He's a photographer, and had places where Francis visited in his life. So it was a collaboration show. It was pretty neat. So we were on our way with Susan and Andrea and his wife, and and my friend Mark there. And anyway, yeah, my friend Mark was there, and got a phone call, and it was canceled.
Oh no.
Yeah, Susan just started bawling. We pulled off the side of the highway, and it was like 15 minutes of silence because she was going home the next week because I said he wasn't feeling well. It was postponed, possibly next week. Well, it didn't happen. I left that bronze in Assisi after my exhibition, and 4 years later, I got a letter from the Vatican again to present one to Pope Benedict, the 16th.
Okay.
And I was like, wow.
You're like, okay then.
All
Wow.
right.
So that
going
was
back.
Yeah.
And so I left that bronze there, so that was good. So I don't have to worry about shipping it,
Right,
dealing
right.
with customs. And then I got a letter from the Archbishop of Assisi to meet with him to get the protocol on how to do this. And I get all these letters in the mail,
Right.
and I'm like, wow, that looks official. And then
Yeah.
you open it up, and I can't read it. You know,
Because it's all in Italian.
so I have to go to my friend Adriano at Trequigini and say, hey, can you translate for this for me, please?
which is a local restaurant. You're like, I trust, listen, this is kind of important.
Yeah.
I need to know what I'm supposed to do with the Pope.
Yeah, and he goes, wow, you got this? He goes, this is different Italian, too. This isn't just normal Italian.
Oh.
Yeah, because they write from the Vatican and high up in the church, they have more of a formal Italian, which I never knew.
Right, yeah, a lot of languages have like formal and casual versions, yeah.
More on the Latin side, I think. And so he's like, this is a real deal. So
Wow.
so he sat down and he translated it over some time and got it back. And then we went to the Vatican and did the protocol with Archbishop Sorrentino, and went to the audience, sat right up on stage next to him, and it was front row, 100,000 people maybe out in the crowd.
Wow.
It's all on video too. It's great. The Vatican had a videographer. My friend was in the crowd getting video from a distance.
Yeah.
And then Susan put this video together, and you can see it on YouTube. It's pretty cool.
Right. Yeah. Maybe we'll pull some of that to edit.
But it happened. I was very calm, and he walked over to me after the audience.
He, the Pope.
He, the Pope, and I had my St. Francis cross on. And he's like, oh, he spoke in English. He goes, oh, that's the cross of St. Francis. And I said, yes, Holy Father. And it happened.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you like handed it to him, physically handed it to him.
Well, I held it, and then one of his guys came up because it's heavy, and he's like, whoa.
Yeah. They were ready to like, okay, we got it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yeah, this is great.
And then I reached in my pocket, and I said, I got a letter to bless my friends and family.
Nice.
Yeah. Then I kissed his ring, and
Oh.
yeah.
Wow, what an amazing experience.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people get to just meet the Pope, and then in addition to that, like actually have an interaction like that where you're giving him a gift, and it's
Yeah, it was like, and if it wasn't for the photographs, I mean, it would probably just seem like, did that really happen?
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
and the photographs are just, the energy is just so cool. Yeah.
right.
And now I give Pope Benedict a bronze of St. Francis, and now we have Pope Francis.
Yeah.
The first time in history they've ever chosen his name, because Francis is quite radical.
I'm
So
sure
is-
they were all sitting there in the room going, what do we use for this one? And your statue's sitting in the corner. They're like, you know what? It's time we use Francis.
Yeah.
I think we should go with Francis. So little do you know the influence you have.
Wow.
Do you know where that is now?
I don't have a picture of it where it's in place at the Vatican.
But it's somewhere in the Vatican, and that's all you know.
Yep.
Well, now we know it's in the room wherever they came up with the name.
Hopefully it's not like a doorstop or something.
They're like, it's heavy. That door keeps blowing.
Yeah.
But see, and those doors, I'm sure, in the Vatican are very heavy. So it's good for that. So you mentioned protocol. What is the protocol? Someday when one of us meets the Pope, what is it that you had? I mean, I heard you say Holy Father, and I'm sure it's a lot about how to, probably physical, how to approach him, how to speak, what words to use.
Yeah,
is your head lower than his, whatever it is?
Yeah, there was a little of that, but it was more of just meeting. The Archbishop was just, he's one of those, Susan say he's got that twinkle in his eye, one of those you could just see. So, I think once we met, there wasn't a lot of like, oh, I'm worried about this guy or anything. It just, yeah, I mean, just simple things like you said. But it was.
But what are those? Like, do you recall what they are?
well, don't rush the stage, and I'm like, yeah, I'm going to do that.
You're right.
It's just,
our guards will take you out.
I mean, because a lot of this is being translated too. So my friend was just like, mix good. He's fine. He's not going to do that. Or
don't high five the Pope.
Yeah. Don't try to take his ring or anything. No, they never said that you can or cannot kiss the ring. But I'm figuring, I'm there. I'm kissing his ring.
Right, and I think that's.
And other people, that because there was other people that he met at that time. I don't know if they had a special audience. Like the mayor of Assisi was there. He kind of made a gesture towards his ring.
Like he didn't actually kiss it.
Right.
Okay.
But I made sure I was. I've been on a long journey to do this.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. You're like, I'm going for it.
And I was respectful.
Easier to ask for forgiveness than permission.
Yeah.
Were there, like, I know I've heard with, like the Queen of England, for example, like you don't turn your back to her. Like if you're in a room with her, you actually back out, and things like that. Like, was there any
nothing like that
sort of physical guidelines like that?
No.
No, huh?
Just basically show respect and.
Yeah, so he's a pretty laid back guy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of security around.
Oh, I'm sure. I
mean, if you see this video, you can just see like photographers or videographers, and then there's, and there's security all over on top with, yeah. I'm sure there's cameras everywhere.
Right.
Those things, especially nowadays.
And this was done in the open air, so it's not like it was
2008.
Yeah.
So it's already been that long.
Yeah.
Gosh,
wow.
Crazy.
Yeah. So
ago.
are you still in contact with the Vatican at all? Like, do you ever get like?
No, it'd be nice to get a commission.
A Facebook friend request or something like that.
Hey, if you're in Italy, let's get a beer together.
A shout out on Twitter.
Yeah.
Or selfies with the statue.
Yeah. Just
They're
got a
like
nice
hanging
bottle
out
of
with
wine.
Francis.
Yeah.
Click.
Where's Mick? I did see the Archbishop again this last trip. Yeah. And presented him with a little thank you gift, and it was great to see him again.
Yeah. And how was that? Did it seem like, I mean, this is the twinkle in his eye guy.
Yeah.
So it was just like, it's great to see you, and it's like old friend kind of stuff, or?
Well, yeah, it's amazing because there's people that have been born and raised in Assisi and really don't get a chance to have this kind of connection with this guy. So.
Right.
For, Susan and I to be there with my friend, and he spent maybe 45 minutes with us. And I'm building the St. Francis Sculpture Garden here in Grand Rapids, and the other reason I wanted to see him this past trip was to get a letter from him, given like a official documentation from the city of Assisi, from the Archbishop of Assisi, to the Dominican sisters at Marywood, where we're building this 12-acre sculpture garden.
Wow, cool.
Yeah, so that was the reason, the main reason I wanted, if I'm gonna, because it took about a month and a half just to get that meeting.
Right, I'm sure.
Which is
it seems
even
like
fast.
a month and a half seems short.
Yeah.
It does.
He even called my friend on his cell phone because we're there for a week, and he goes, Mick, I've not heard from the Archbishop, and I'm like, oh. I'm like, I'm gonna go knock on his door. I'm here. I'm gonna go knock on his door. And he goes, just wait. And we were walking back from the Basilica of St. Francis, and his phone rings. And my friend can't walk and talk, so he just stops in the middle of the street talking on his phone like there's a cord on it. And he's like, oh, Archbishop, And then the line was dropped.
Oh, no.
And he goes, that was the Archbishop.
Cell phones.
And he goes, oh, he's trying to figure out how to call him back. And then the Archbishop called back and says, oh, sorry, Andrea, the line dropped, but is Mick still here? Can he meet me tomorrow afternoon?
Yeah, awesome.
And so we went, and we get there, and then there's this, he's like, we'll be with you in a minute. And the secretary would let us in, and then he comes out and says, hi, and he's walking these three people out. And then he explains to us that these are three of people from Mel Gibson's team. They're actually they're working on a movie of St. Francis.
Oh.
They were there right before us.
Huh.
And my friend Andrea is a photographer and videographer. And so at the end of my meeting with the Archbishop, I said, after I asked him to do the favor for Grand Rapids, and I said, can I ask you one more favor? And he's like, I said, can you get Andrea a job with Mel Gibson's team, and there has been a connection going, so something might happen with that.
Wow, cool.
And then when we left there was a double rainbow going over the city of Assisi.
Very cool.
Because we had our umbrellas, it was raining, and
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah,
That
it's
is-
cool.
So these are all very obviously religious, very spiritual. Before you started that spark with St. Francis, when you were in Italy years ago with friends, where were you religious-wise, spiritually? Were you already a fairly spiritual person, or did this start
Yeah.
you on a new journey?
Yeah, I've always had a closeness. I mean, I went through a phase in my late teens, early 20s of questioning a lot of things, and but I've always had a closeness with God, and but not so much until I met Francis. Francis is almost like a stepping stone to Jesus. You know, a lot of times when someone comes up to you and says, "Hey, can I talk to you about Jesus?" And you're like, "Well, you know, I do have to get going." But Francis, when you mention Francis, sometimes I say Francis, sometimes I say St. Francis, because he would say, "Oh, don't make a saint of me," you know. And he's just respected by so many. All forms of Christianity respect him, and other non-Christian groups respect his teachings. You know, it's almost the Buddhist style and I mean, in Christ, love thy neighbor. And so it really picked back up for me when I met Francis. But before that, you know, I was just trying to make and break, you know, as an artist. And I don't know if break's the right word, but you know.
Ceramic,
Yeah,
statues.
yeah. So, you know, I did a lot of paintings, a lot of commission work. I've always had a strong connection with people. And so I've had that ability to sell, to be confident enough to say, yeah, I can do a family portrait for you. And,
Yeah,
you know,
you've
like
done a lot of different things.
Yeah.
So are you Catholic now, or you're just still in the same place in the sense of
Yeah, I'm still-
spiritual and?
Yeah, still on the journey.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a good place to be, you know.
Yeah.
There's a lot going on in the world that breaks my heart, with the earthquake in Italy, and all my friends are safe, and just, you know, all the terrorism and just all the political stuff. And so I mean, I just try to stay centered, you know, and try to, you know, keep out of the social aspect of the politics and pointing fingers of your faith and your religion.
Right.
You know, I just want to respect people, and so that's kind of where I'm at right now.
No, that's good.
With working with my sculptures.
Yeah. So what sort of, I mean, obviously you've gotten some good responses by, hey, come present this to the Pope. But what has surprised you, or what's been the biggest moment in regard to all of these, aside from actually meeting the Pope? But in the sense of the reaction that others have gotten from it, or the impact that these have made on them, because they are religious and people are connected to Francis and this
Correct.
figure. So, you know, people see Jesus in a piece of toast sometimes, and it means something to them. So
Right.
I would think something like this would have a big impact. So what are some of the things that have really, like, wow, like, I can't believe it made that impact?
Well, I think it's gotten to the point where it's all happening at the St. Francis Sculpture Garden at Marywood. We started this project 7 years ago because of the energy and the people that I met in Assisi during my 30-day exhibition. I mean, I was there every day for 30 days, meeting and greeting people. Art Prize is 2 weeks is a breeze compared to that. It was kind of my training for Art Prize when I first was
I'm
doing
sure.
that.
Well, I'm sure with the St. Francis exhibit, you know, people were making a pilgrimage there. In a sense.
And that's why I wanted to find a place in Grand Rapids, and that's when we teamed up with the sisters at Marywood, and they've given Instruments of Hope is the nonprofit group that is building this garden, raising the money for it, and it's 12 acres. And so the people I've met out there, strangers I've met out there, have just make it all. You know, if I'm having a tough day and someone's out there and they're thanking me, or I mean, there's so many little small miracles that have happened out there. You know, even on how we've raised money, because it's all on fundraising, and it's a tough project to fundraise for, we're on our 7th year of building this. We've got 9 sculptures installed of the 24. They're going to be out there.
And are they this size?
Yeah, they're this size.
So you're using the same silicone cast.
Yep. Some of them I still have to sculpt. Some of them aren't sculpted.
And then you're doing some new ones also.
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. And they're all bronze out there. And then I build different pedestals. Some look like tree trunks. Some look like stacked rocks. Some are stacked rocks. One is he's on a pedestal that looks like the Tau.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
And
so depending
so
on
it's
what
like a big T,
depending on what the moment is that sculpture represents, you build a pedestal that goes with that theme.
Yeah, and then there's a story that I write that goes with each story. And eventually this will all be put into a book, so people can have a book or a catalog of the journey they take. Because not everybody can get to Assisi, and even if they have a devotion to Francis, or they just want to go there on a pilgrimage. So I wanted to bring that spirit of not only the landscape and the hometown of Francis, but also his journey opposed from just the guy with the bird on his shoulder.
Right. And if are these things that people can commission? If someone wants this, they can contact you. And and your website is it the Micasso one?
Yeah,
It's the
Micasso.com.
Micasso.com. Okay, so let's grab these over here because I want to take a look at these. Like can you hand me the one with the cross?
Yeah.
Okay. Right, it's heavy. So how much does this weigh? and this is like.
Yeah. I don't know. Maybe it's 25 pounds.
Yeah. I mean it's definitely heavy. So what? Why this? Like, what did you do?
Well, this one actually represents the cross at Cascade Christian Church in Ada. And they commissioned me to do a 13-foot bronze cross.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
is that up?
And they actually wanted a bird on the cross. So there's also Then after I did the cross, they wanted me to design a plaque that they could hang in the church that represents that landscape. So I did. This is like a call to relief. So
it's a representation of what's outside.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, and it is. It's so heavy.
Yeah.
So you're doing this. So what's the time involved when they say, okay, we want this, until you're holding this 25-pound piece of bronze?
Well, I think for me to create it, it took me it was within a month or so. Depending on different projects that I have going, how much time I put on one piece, I don't really know.
So like hours, yeah.
I don't know how many hours. If I did that in a week, or if I did 3 hours this day and I didn't work on it for another week, and then But then once I'm done with it, I make the silicone mold, cast it in that wax, get it to the foundry. The foundry usually is a month out before on a small piece like this. On a big piece, you want at least 3 months.
So like the giant cross, how big is this cross that's outside the church?
13 feet by 6 across.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is that
it's
done?
All wood grain.
Is that in pieces when it's
when they do
bronze?
When they do my big sculptures, they usually cast in like 30-pound pieces.
Okay.
30 to 40 pound, and when I do a 6-foot, when I do a statue like this, or if it's Francis life size, they'll cast it in separate pieces and then they weld it all back together. And you don't even see a welding seam or anything. And then it weighs about 600 pounds.
Wow.
Like the one on Bridge Street, at the Garden of Life, is Madonna of the Streets, it's called. I think that's 680 pounds.
Wow.
She's almost 7 feet tall.
Yeah. And how durable is this? I wouldn't want to drop it on my foot.
You'd break your foot.
Yeah.
Or the ground.
Like, are they pretty? It seems
You
fairly.
can't break it.
It seems fairly indestructible.
Right.
Like it seems like. Yeah.
Yeah.
It seems indestructible. So then you also have another one right there that's of someone else, but it's actually a different material.
Yeah, this is actually bronze powder and a resin. So it's like a 2-part resin that I mix with bronze powder. It's really fine. I mix them together, and I put it, the mold, I should have brought the mold too. Then you pour that liquid, and you have like 5 minutes, so you get it all in there. And then after it sets up, you take this out, and then excuse me, and then I steel wool it. And then the bronze comes out.
Okay. The shiny parts.
Yeah, because it'll look more like like this, and then you steel wool, and that plastic, that resin breaks
okay.
away.
So this is, so when it came out,
Yeah, it was more
it had
like this brown up
yeah,
here.
so it had like a, okay, and then you shine it
Yeah.
up, and
then I'll put like metal in the back so it gives it more weight. You can kind of see I've got a piece of metal in there, so it has that more substance.
Yeah.
But it's a nice process that gives different selling points. You know, if someone says, "Oh, I'd love a bronze of that," and I say, "Well, that's cost this much." And
right.
they're
Because
they're
what would this cost? What would the 25-pound?
Yeah, I think that was $1,200 for that.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
And then.
Because bronze, I mean,
Yeah.
melted metal, that's not
Yeah.
cheap.
And it's
I mean, just that alone.
the metal's expensive, but it's
Right.
more of the labor that goes into it, not just
Time,
my
yep.
labor, but also the labor at the foundry.
Yep.
But then I can cast these myself, which is a great skill to
The
have.
resin,
Yeah.
the resin,
You know.
bronze powder resin, yeah.
And a lot of these are like that too here, you know, so.
Yeah, and then, okay, so this one's a lot lighter. This is probably 4 pounds, I'm
Yeah.
guessing.
Maybe a little more, yeah.
Weighs more than a can of soup. Weighs, I'm trying to figure out, like, can of soup's about 2 pounds. Okay, so how much would something like this be?
Oh, something like that is around, I don't know, 600. It's
600,
usually about half the price of bronze.
Okay. Yeah, and it's still, like, I mean, to display it, it's still looks really nice, and wow, that's really cool. Thank you.
Yeah, it's nice to work with different materials.
So that, so it kind of, it branches off a little. Oh yeah, here's a bigger version of the same. What's this?
And that's actually a hydrocal, which I color, which is a gypsum cement basically.
Yeah, I was
And-
gonna say it definitely has a different texture. And this is more, like it can crack and stuff. Like this thing, you're not gonna crack.
Yeah, that if that broke, I mean, there's fiberglass and stuff in it, and it's durable. You know, I mean, years ago they used to use terracotta, and they still do in Italy. A lot of terracotta. It's basically more of a same kind of material.
Right.
Yeah,
Right.
but yeah, it's Officer Kozminski.
Yeah, and so that's a local officer who was killed in the line of duty.
Yep.
And so it's not just the religious types of pieces that you do. I mean, you've
Oh,
branched
no.
off into other things. I know right here we have a couple of busts that are soldiers
Yeah.
locally who were
Michigan,
lost.
yeah.
Yep, Michigan soldiers. And so tell me about these. Like, what is it? You did 3 of them because we have one over to the side there also. And these 2 gentlemen. Why these 3, and what was it that drove you to do this?
These 3 soldiers represent the Michigan fallen soldiers. And there's been over 300 that have been killed in Afghanistan and in Iraq since 9/11. And I was commissioned to do life-size, like big 7-foot. So I did the bust of them, had them cast, and then I'm working on the 3 big soldiers, you know, with the guns
So
and the backpack,
full
full
like
size.
6 foot or
Yeah.
whatever they were. Yeah.
And this started in 2000. It was my 3rd year. I did enter it in Art Prize in front of the Ford Museum.
Art Prize, which is a local
Right.
art festival, but it's an international event that people come from all over the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's quite a great thing for our city. But it was never supposed to be for Art Prize, and they asked me to put it in Art Prize if I could get it to a certain. I said, if I can get it to a certain point, it's not finished. We built a wall around it so people couldn't touch it. But these 3 soldiers are from. They actually are from our armory on 44th Street
In Grand Rapids.
in Grand Rapids.
Okay.
So they used their likeness to represent the 300.
Okay.
And it was supposed to be put at the armory when finished, and then we wanted to move it to the Veterans Home. And so this project started off really strong, and then it kind of it's gathering cobwebs now, which is sad. And
Right.
but we found a new location with the city up on Colville and Lake Michigan Drive. But it's just a matter of getting a group of people together again to help raise the money.
Right.
And I was never supposed to get into the fundraising aspect of it. I was just brought on for my skill as a sculptor.
Right.
And when I entered it in Art Prize, it was very emotional because when I was sculpting these men, their parents had to get me photographs of them. And so I didn't meet the parents at that time, but they got me the photographs to work on. And they understood that, I mean, I wasn't going to try to like make it exactly like them, but I wanted to use their likeness because it just because they're from Grand Rapids, or from this armory.
Mm-hmm.
And then when they asked me to put an art prize, I did these 3 busts, and we had all the names of the 300 right in front of the soldiers. And there were people walking by, and I'm standing out there meeting and greeting people, and they're thanking me for it. And it was kind of tough at first, you know, because I didn't have a connection. I didn't have a brother or sister or father that fought overseas, and you know, I didn't have that emotional connection. Like if someone says, "Oh, thank you for building the St. Francis Sculpture Garden," I had such a great healing time out there. I can say, "Well, you're welcome," but for me to say you're welcome and something that I was commissioned to do, I didn't have that emotional contact until I started meeting these people that saw their brother or sister's name on there, or their children's name on there, and they're crying and thanking me. And so that went on for, you know, almost 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, and
you're really seeing the impact that your work has when you don't expect it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I emotionally got a lot more connected with, you know, what their sacrifice they have done for us, and hearing their stories, and just silently stepping back and watching people touch the names on the wall. And so I hope this project can regain some steam, because it really needs to be done. I mean, they've raised over $50,000, and not one donation has been over $1,000. So we're talking a lot of small donations that people put into this.
So you have the 3 busts right now, and then working on, and are these, what are these?
These are the cold cast too.
These are the cold cast.
Yeah.
Okay, so these are
yeah.
So what's the material here?
This is the same, the bronze powder.
Bronze powder.
Yeah,
Okay. Yep.
Same technique as the other one.
Okay.
Just a different kind of mold.
Yeah.
And I did this for art. These I did for Art Prize. The memorial that will be eventually put in place will be the life size, larger than life.
Yeah, I was going to say they seem a little like slightly larger than.
Yeah, and you can see
than human. Yeah.
We'll have a picture.
Right.
You can see.
Yeah. Yeah.
So. Yeah.
So you've brought up fundraising, and it's something that I think when you go into an art, you know, when you go into art professionally, when you look at it as your career, you know, in your head, it's probably like, okay, well, I'm commissioned to do a piece, and I do it, and they pay me, and then, you know, so it's like I'm creative, I'm the creative, you know, and you really don't, you know, artists, lots of different personalities and stuff, but you're definitely very left brain or right brained, and you know, not really so much with the, you know, you're not going to be an accountant. You know, you don't find many artists who are like, I could have been an accountant, you know, because that's not what draws you. It's the creative. So now you're getting involved in fundraising, probably in part because it's like, all right, if I'm going to get paid for this one, we got to raise the funds for it. I mean, that's part of it, but also you put your heart into the project, and you want it to happen. Yeah,
I'm sure a lot of artists keep me out of it. You know, when you need me, call me.
Right.
But you know, I've learned how to raise funds, and it's not easy. I mean, I can do the business side of raising funds for the sculpture garden at Marywood, or I can help out now with the soldiers and try to get this thing going again. And I can spend 2, 3, 4 hours doing the paperwork, sending out emails, talking to people on the phone, giving them a tour, explaining it, and it kind of wears me out. I can do that, but I'm more tired doing that for 4 hours than I am working 10 hours in my shop. Maybe I come, you know.
Yeah.
It's a whole different,
Right, because it's a different type of energy.
For my brain, you know, working at the computer.
Yeah, when you're creating, it's, I mean, it tires you out over time, but it's also something that you're getting energy from also.
Right.
You know, because
physically.
Because it is your passion. And I have a friend of mine who, he's an international artist. He started as a graffiti artist. And in like Chicago, like he grew up inner city Chicago. And he's pretty well renowned now. Like he's in some history books and stuff. His name's Gonzalez Jr. But his graffiti name was Zor, so people know him by that. And he's gotten fairly popular. He has shows all over the world. he had Chicago Fire based a character on him, and he did the artwork for that.
Okay, nice.
And so I've talked to him quite a bit about the business of it and his brand and all that. He's a really smart guy. But he said, he's like, you know, you got to kind of like be careful what you wish for. He said, because here, you know, I grew up in her city and I had all this, and I slowly grew my art in popularity, and he moved from graffiti to fine art. So he does paintings. And, you know, he said, because I have to do a show or something or some museum wants me to do a show, and it's literally like, okay, we need 10 pieces by this day, and he's like, I am just up like all night, just like doing, you know, it's kind of like, here I am doing my passion,
All-nighter,
but yet it's like, I got to get this done. He's like, because I mean, I've hung out with him before and all that, and he's like, all right, I got to focus though. He's like, because they're picking up these pieces Thursday morning to take them to the museum, and I got to have them done. And
it's a good problem, right?
yeah, it's a good problem to have, but at the same time, for somebody who's like so creative and likes to march to his own beat, and he's very tuned into what his brand is. You know, like people have wanted to put some of his stuff on T-shirts and tennis shoes, and he's turned them down because they haven't. Because he's like, they screw up the brand. They're not going to do it the way I want them to do it. And so
That's
it is.
tough.
It is a good
tough call sometimes,
Yeah.
especially if you're hungry and you need to make some money, and you're like, is this a good thing? Do I stick to my guns? It's.
Have you ever been in a position like that where they're like, hey, Mick, we want to take this and make keychains out of them, you know? You know, let's make St. Francis keychains. You know, have you ever had something like that where you were kind of presented with something that was like, well, like maybe would be good money, but at the same time you were like, it just wouldn't feel right.
Yeah, not really. Not yet, anyways. You know, I mean, I've thought about doing that myself. You know, having just as the sculpture garden at Marywood grows, and people would like to take something home that they could get for $20 or something.
Right.
It'd be nice to have something
Like
small,
little statues
little St. Francis
they can
statues.
take.
You know, but I've never wanted it to be like, you know, touristy, where you know they mass produce. You know, statues of St. Francis, you know, because they're all over, you know, with the bird on his shoulder and all that kind of stuff. But who knows? You know, maybe I might go, wow, that's it. Okay, you want me to do this? I'd have to think about it, and it's actually my work's going to be spread like all over the world. You're telling me now, and is that going to take away from the integrity of the work, or is it just going to help? Is it going to make somebody happy? So those are questions that.
Right.
Yeah.
Because you think of someone like Ansel Adams, whose work has been mass produced, like seriously mass produced everywhere. And, you know, I think
the
artists.
consumer world now. Everybody likes.
You want to sell, so that makes sense. But artists also, and some artists I've talked to, they end up doing things that aren't necessarily their passion, but it's adjusting to what the market will buy.
You have to adjust. You know, I mean, you can kind of guide your journey on how you think things are going to happen, but that's when God just laughs at you.
Yeah. He's like, that was a nice try.
Yeah. No.
Yeah.
Oh, dang it! I thought I had it all planned.
Yeah, that happened in my life too. Things just don't go the way you plan them. So sculptures, clearly, the sculptures and the bronze and all that is something you've done. Paintings, you actually started more in paintings, didn't you? With portraits and things like that.
Yeah, I've worked on oil paints, acrylics, watercolor, etchings, dry point.
And you paint. This is a table, and actually, if you'll pick that up, it's really interesting. It's it's painted glass, but it's painted on the underside.
Yeah, it's reverse glass painting.
Yeah, reverse glass painting. So it is something where I know you mentioned. Like even when, I don't know where your name is, you mentioned your name. I don't even see where your name is, but you mentioned how like everything, like if you were to write your name on it, you have to do it backwards.
Did I forget to sign it?
Yeah. Maybe, I don't see. You're like, oh crap, I gotta do that. Yeah. You know, and when I saw it, I was like, I've seen this before, because I have a friend of mine who has an entire table that you did that's
Yeah.
like an aquarium scene. And
Yeah.
so I remember seeing that and how cool it was. And you know, so what is this exactly? And also, can you show the back, just kind of what,
Sure.
like you paint it,
I hide my
and then,
secrets. I hide
yeah, that's what we're No Limits. We're all about exposing the secrets. So the back of this is like a red, so you paint it, and then what's the process for that? And is it also like, do you need a particular kind of glass and paint and like how is this different?
Well, I've worked on acrylic plates as well.
Yeah.
But this is a glass tabletop, and you could actually hang this on the wall. You know, you have to get it secure hanging, but you know, this is just one of my styles of my more free-spirited, just kind of lines and colors and shapes, and I like to create a lot of fun art. I like to say, you know, that someone gets joy out of, and I really need to be happy when I work too. I don't get a lot of work done if I'm going through any kind of down period. I'm not a good creator.
Right. Well, it's important for creativity to be able to
I mean, some
enjoy it and
artists
have fun.
might be able to, they have to get maybe really deep and distant to create. Well, I need to be in a really good place, and so I like my I think it shows in my work, and I don't like to explain a lot of kind of what goes into something like this,
But this is something
because I like
where
people to pick up their
see
own.
what they're going to
Yeah.
see, right? So with this, you probably did the black lines first.
Correct.
And then, because that's the first that had to be in the forefront.
Yep.
And then you did the different colors.
Yep, different layering. So you just
Okay.
got to keep working backwards, but you have to think frontwards to know that it's going to show through the glass.
Yeah, yeah. And then you have to seal it with something special on the back, or it's just
It's
you
just more
put a big-
paint, just
yeah.
more paint. Yep.
Yeah. Cool. And price-wise, because I know people wonder, like, if somebody wanted this, what would this piece of glass cost?
Something like this is right around 2,000.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. So like a table size would probably be
Yeah.
like 5, 6,
Yeah.
something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah. Yeah. It's really cool. And I remember the table that I saw was just so cool. I'd be afraid of my kids breaking it, but that's beautiful.
This kind of glass, I believe, is tempered, so if it did, it wouldn't break.
Oh, it would just crack. It wouldn't.
in little pieces, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I
and-
did a whole show in 2013. I had a gallery in the Waters building, and it was I did a whole reverse glass painting. So it was fun. It was just
cool.
one of those things I never thought, I'm like, I can do this.
And since you're up,
Okay.
let's talk a little bit about this sort of thing, because this is it's a combination of painting and sculpture. And these are musical pieces that you've done for a business, and you said these are going to HopCat in
HopCat
Chicago.
in Chicago, yeah.
Okay, which is cool. So if
Yeah.
you go to HopCat in Chicago. So this is Elton John. That's
Pete Townsend.
Pete Townsend from The Who. So just with this, explain what the process is here, because it's different. It's sculpture painting.
Yeah, this style right here is kind of, I truly believe this is 20 years of my work kind of coming together. Because if you look at my website or you look at my Facebook gallery page, you know, I've done flower paintings and landscapes and commission work and sculptures, and so from all my painting skills, and I've always loved colors. I've done a lot of colorful paintings, and then I've done these real whimsical, free spirit kind of things. But my skill as doing realistic portraits, if it's for the Kozminski Memorial or the soldiers, or if it's a family portrait.
And you really started with portraits, like in your painting.
Yeah.
That was your beginning. So
Yeah.
this is circling back, but in a much different way.
Yeah, so when HopCat got a hold of me, they said, can you do Elton John, Tom Petty, and Pete Townsend? They were going from 2 pieces they bought for their place in Lincoln, Nebraska. I did one of John Lennon and Freddie Mercury, and real big. But they're paintings. They're flat. They're realistic. So they were like, we like that style.
Okay.
And I'm like, well, I don't do that style anymore.
Yeah.
I can do that style,
Yeah.
but I got on this sculpting, so it's 3D, and maybe it's hard to see now, but And then the whole thing is actually colored with plastic, different colored plastics. I'm like a scientist in my workshop.
Wow.
It's actually not even, I don't use paint brushes. I use like Q-tips and my fingers, and I go through like about 1,600 rubber gloves because I'm using these little ramekins, and I take a little bit of this plastic here and a little plastic here. It's liquid.
Yeah.
Then I take my color and I mix it, and then
For the
I
actual
quick
plastic.
to add to it.
Huh.
Yeah. And so so this is all that color. It's not like acrylic paint or oil paint. I've never seen it done before. But because I've been a painter and a sculptor and I know how to make molds, I figured this is gonna be cool.
Wow. So this is really a new type of art. I mean, you've created something that really hasn't been done before.
Yeah.
And what would you call this?
It's a relief. Colored. It's a relief, yeah.
But like, what's the, if somebody's like, what do you call this style? Or if you were to teach it in a class,
Yeah,
Well,
it's a colored relief sculpture.
Okay.
So it's not really a painting, even though
It was inspired by a painting where they wanted paintings,
Yeah.
but you're like, it's not really my thing anymore.
Well, I
so.
wasn't, through my career, I've been inspired by, the Renaissance painters. So I've done paintings like,
The masters, you
the
duplicated
masters.
some of the masters,
Sure, I did
right?
that, so I've been influenced by, the Impressionists through a period of my life. So I'd go to those museums, study those artists, go to libraries and everything. But for like the last 10 years, I've kind of stayed away from that and just kind of walked my own journey just by learning from my creations and not necessarily trying to do a Rembrandt or a Van Gogh in that kind of mindset. I was recently in Germany 2 years ago, and I visited this town where they had this work called Hundertwasser. He is from Austria, and it's similar. There's some. I mean, I think I might have been influenced through him, and because he did a lot of stuff in buildings. He's an architect, and so there might have been some of that going on here, and so. And then I added the record of Elton John. But when HopCat came, when Mark Sellers, the owner, came to me, he loved it. Oh, can you do? So then he gave me a picture of Elton John to work from and a picture of Pete Townsend. I already had Tom Petty finished. So when he saw that, he thought, wow, I want more.
And you had it done in this style.
Yeah, exactly. And then I told him what the price is. He's like, oh, wow. I guess, So there's the business side now, negotiation.
Right.
And I want this commission. He knows my work. He respects me as an artist, and he's very fair. But what I recommended is I can make a mold of this, recast it, recolor it, and then you will get the first copy, the first casting, and I get to keep the original.
Oh, okay. So then you can help cover your costs.
Yeah, I mean,
of your work
I still made money, but that first piece I make, there's a lot of money that goes into that silicone mold. It's
right, time and material. Yeah, probably time more than anything else. Yeah.
Right. So now I have the originals. He came in and he couldn't even really tell the difference. There's a difference between the original.
Yeah.
But I did stay to a similar color scheme because if you look at this, I can't even copy this. I could come close. But I try to make art like this and like this now that can't be copied. If I can't copy it, someone else maybe can't copy it.
Yeah, if you have two next to each other, it's like, well, yeah, they're clearly very similar, but it's okay. But the colors won't be exact because nothing will be exact because of how it's done.
Correct. And I could cast it and I could make the whole thing white, or I could make it all black, or I could have it cast in bronze now. So this could be cast in bronze.
Wow.
Yeah.
That would be really heavy.
Maybe Elton will call me.
He wants it in bronze. Yeah. That would be awesome. So this is something where you started working with it as a flat surface, and then you would take like pieces of clay or whatever, and you'd build. You built on it?
No, this isn't clay because this is actually the original piece. So if this was clay.
But for the mold? Oh, this is the one you actually built.
Yep.
Like.
Yeah. So I made this piece and this piece.
Yeah.
The original. So it's the.
So this wasn't from a cast.
No, this is not from a cast.
Okay, so you didn't have to make.
I could do this in clay.
Right.
But when you do stuff in clay, normally the clay doesn't stay around anymore. I
Right,
can
right.
reuse that clay because once I make a mold of it, you know, I like to keep the original because you never know, you know.
Right, yeah.
Oh, we got this piece in the museum. This is the original clay, and you can.
Yeah.
Plus, it's nice to show students or people that come to my shop and want to see it.
Yeah.
You can kind of show them the process.
Yeah.
But I used polystyrene on this and epoxies, and yeah,
Huh.
and this same material actually to build these cold casts. It's the same
okay.
material.
Okay. And so, because of the cost and all that, and HopCat was like, oh, that's kind of steep. Then you went into the negotiation. You said, okay, well, how about this? I can give it to you for this price,
Right.
but I get to cast this. So then you did take a mold
Yep.
from this.
Yeah.
And then you're able to take that mold and create other ones. So, but when you do that, you take a mold and it'll come out like this, and then you paint it?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. So it's a
Actually,
totally
recolor-
different,
well,
it's a different
yeah.
process, totally.
Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
Yep. And I keep the rights to everything. I mean, most of the time, if somebody wants a piece, like if you wanted to buy this and say, you can't make another cast of this for someone else. And I
Right,
go, well,
right.
yes, I can,
Yeah.
because it's my creation.
Right.
But if he wants to pay me to have the rights, he would have the right for us to negotiate a price.
Right.
Think, okay, how many am I going to make in 10 years? How much money is the potential of me making in 10 years?
Right.
It's
Like
a
how many,
guess.
how many people are going to want this of Elton John?
Yeah, it's a guess.
It could be huge, or it could be like
Yeah, maybe.
one.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah, huh. And also, I guess in theory, I mean, if HopCat loves it, I mean, they have different locations, so they could
sure.
get another cast from, I mean, they could get another one from you.
Yeah.
That you just used for
Yeah,
the
that's-
cast.
Yeah, that'd be awesome.
Yeah. Are you listening, HopCat?
Well, that's why I did it too. For I mean, not, because it's nice to keep the original, but it's definitely for sale. It's just for a higher price.
Yeah. So since you were using skills you've already had, what was different about this? Because you weren't doing a flat surface. You weren't like a painting. You weren't doing a 3D sculpture.
Right.
You were doing something in between. So how did that change your thinking and how you did it? Or what, like when you get a shot of Elton John, you're thinking 3D, but at the same time, you're not seeing the other ear, you know, things like that.
Like I had this professionally documented, so I can make prints of it too. So I can have, I do 13 by 19 prints.
Yeah.
You're not, and I can have it photographed. You can see more of the dimension. Or I can have it photographed straight on, like if you took like with your iPhone. And I can make a nice print of it, make T-shirts of it.
Yeah.
And it'd be cool. You'd see the depth, but you wouldn't really be able to feel the depth. So the only thing difference between like this and like doing the sculpture of the Kozminski piece, it's basically the similar. It's the similar.
Right.
Relief.
Okay. Yeah, so it's a similar thing where it's 3D-ish.
Except
yeah.
it's vibrant and colorful.
Yeah,
and
okay.
it's crazy shapes and colors.
Yeah.
And try to okay, Elton John, and Pete Townsend, I got
Okay.
the British flag, and
Yeah.
Behind Blue Eyes, one of their songs, and then I've got like the record. I'll find like an old 45 and put it in there too.
Right. Right.
So even when I cast a mold, it captures the detail of
okay.
those inserts.
Yeah. So the
Did you ever-
mold isn't gonna. So if you do another one, are you gonna stick another record in there, or it's just gonna be a part of the?
I think I'm gonna just put in. No, I did put it for the one in HopCat. I did find another record, so it's cool.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
So I
yeah.
could paint it if I wanted to, but it's kind of cool to have that. I think it's
Right. It
unique,
is. Yeah. It's definitely a different
And I
element.
got pinballs in this one, Pinball Wizard. So I got
Oh,
some pinballs
cool.
that I put in there. That
Yeah. Yeah, it is really cool. Yeah, so with paintings, we were talking about, I know you have one back here. Do you mind grabbing that one off the wall and we can just show it up here? I think it's easier to do it that way. Okay, so this ended up being the painting that was a poster for a local art festival. But we were talking about it earlier, and you said that it was kind of a pain to do. Like, why was this so different from other paintings you've
well,
done?
being self-taught, I always, if it's a commission piece, it's one thing. I kind of discuss with the client what they're looking for. They might see in a piece that I've done, and they like that style. And so I kind of know where I'm going in. There's no, you know, straightforward. It's not like giving me carte blanche. But when I do a piece for myself, I'll give it's almost like I'm the teacher giving the student an exercise. Okay, I got this idea in my head, now how can I do it? And I guess I still do that today. But this one is just, let's put all these different buildings of Grand Rapids together.
Because they were like you're doing the poster for the festival. Just
actually, I did this.
Do what you're going to do.
Actually, I did this before.
Okay, so it wasn't for the poster. Okay.
It wasn't a direct commission piece.
Yeah, yeah.
But then they saw it after I did it, and they said, we want this for
okay.
the festival in 2006.
Yeah, yeah.
So they made all posters and T-shirts.
Okay, cool.
Yeah, so I put different buildings in, so I sketched up all the different buildings, and there's actually the Calder.
Yeah, thanks, Tomas. Tomas brought in an easel if we want to put it on that.
Oh.
That makes it easier for you.
I want to hit that other painting.
Easelier.
Take it, easel.
Take it, easel.
And so I drew all the different buildings and shapes, and you can see the Calder.
Yep, we have it's a famous, Alexander Calder has a famous sculpture in Grand Rapids that's massive. Yeah.
And so that's kind of a Grand Rapids symbol.
Yeah, absolutely.
So,
yes, it's on everything.
And so it worked out great for the festival poster because they always like that in there. That's a big part of it. And I didn't even do this thinking that. Maybe I did, I don't remember.
Right, no, but if you're doing something about our city, it's pretty inevitable that that's going to make it in there somehow. Yeah.
In the archway of the Amway Grand Plaza.
Okay.
And I got the flag here from the Waters building before it was, and Flanagan's over here, and what is that? Across from the Bob there, the big skyline there.
Oh, the condos and the hotel.
Marriott.
Yeah, the condos and
yeah. And here's the Amway, the tower, and then these pillars are actually in front of the art museum.
Oh, okay.
You know, things people don't notice, the blue bridge that.
Oh, yeah, I didn't see
right
that
there.
until you pointed it out.
Yeah, and the space shuttles, we have a space capsule. It's kind of outlined here with the American flag on it, and you can kind of see it says United States.
Because we have an astronaut from.
So then I did all the
Rapids,
drawings, and so I did it was all, I'm like, oh, now how am I going to keep this? I just remember it was like, okay, I would get dizzy doing this. I didn't do too many paintings in this style, but.
Right.
It led to other styles that I did, but.
Yeah, so for this, it was harder because you are trying to incorporate so many distinctive elements of different buildings and that kind of thing without, so you want to make sure it's recognizable without covering up a part that you need to show some other part of a different building.
Well, you have to keep if you work, because to make a painting pleasable to the eye, you really need composition. When you're working with color, it's almost working color with using your color to create the composition of making sure there's not too much blue in this area or red. So all that kind of stuff goes through my head.
This would make one of those great like adult coloring book things, and then you could have like a diagram of what all the buildings are, so each person can color it in a way to highlight the building they want.
Yeah, that's a great example of what kind of the insanity I went through.
Yeah, that's really cool.
Oh, thanks.
Cool. So this was a one-time thing for you, just because you were like,
yeah.
It makes my head hurt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It took me a while. So you got to keep moving.
And then they picked it up for the poster. Yeah, that's really cool. Awesome.
So just leave it there?
Yeah, I think it can just stay there.
Okay. Like this painting up here is kind of influenced by Van Gogh. So I did this years ago.
Just pull it over here, I think. Oh, so this is one of your like masters.
Well, no, actually I did do
Masters influence.
Yeah, master influence.
Okay.
Because I did do some copies of Masters. That was fun. I did that for a show, but.
So explain this. And is this something you're kind of past now, right? Like this is some of your previous work?
Yeah, I mean I can still paint like that if I want to, but I'm in a whole different place now with more of a workshop and sculpting and mold making and that. And this was more of a quiet time and maybe in my basement studio at home. And but I actually was in this place. It's called Kinderdijk. It's in the Netherlands. It's the home of the 19 windmills. And so being being in the Netherlands, the windmill, you can't help but being influenced by Van Gogh.
Right. And our area is very heavily Dutch.
Yeah.
So we have a lot of Dutch influences here. And we actually have here in West Michigan, we have the last windmill that left Netherlands.
Ah, it's in Holland. In Holland.
Yeah, the one in Holland,
Yeah.
Michigan. Yeah, it's the De Zwaan. But
Okay.
after that one left, they said no more. Ours was the last one. They're like, stop taking our stuff. But it's a very, we have the Tulip Festival here and stuff like that. So you had mentioned your studio. So you have had different studios where you've had them in your home, you've had them, like in a downtown type of setting, and you've had them in Italy. You had one in Italy for a while.
Yeah.
So what is it about the different studios, about the atmospheres? Do they tend to kind of go along with where you are in your art at the time, or the types of pieces you're creating? Like how does that influence what you're doing?
Yeah.
Or
Most of the time, I like to be quite private when I work.
Yeah.
I like my time. I'm not a street painter. Even though I've had a gallery in Saugatuck for 3 years, years ago, and then I was in the Waters building for 13 years. People could walk by. In the Waters building, I never created out. It felt like showing off, and and people wouldn't come in and look. They'd probably think that they don't want to bother me.
they want to interrupt you. Yeah.
So I always would work in the back there. So that was one kind of atmosphere. Working at home years ago was great because I could work at any time. I'd take a nap at 10 o'clock at night and get up at midnight and work all night. Susan was getting up at 4 in the morning for traffic.
Right, for work, yeah, which
So
I
I'd be
used
going
to
to bed,
I used to
she'd
work
be-
with
yeah.
Susan, so that's how we initially met, yeah.
So, when we moved into our house together, it was great to have that space to create, and then I could 1 in the morning and get tired and walk down to Putt-Putts and get a sandwich and a beer. And,
Yeah.
And then in Saugatuck, I did create out, because I had a gallery, and Saugatuck is a cool Michigan town.
And it's a very creative
Yeah,
town.
very.
It's a very open. It's very gay friendly. It has been for like 100 years.
Yeah.
It's been a very LGBT friendly area, and it's very artistic. It's very that's really
People
a place
from Grand
that
Rapids
you
will go
can
there
do
to
that.
buy art.
Yeah,
because you're
well,
only,
people from Chicago actually.
Oh,
A lot of
yeah.
Chicagoans go there. Yeah.
and we're only 40 minutes, basically 35, 40 minutes. So it's, but for people to buy art, in one of my gallery settings, or if I do a show is different. But if it's just a walk by, Grand Rapids is not so much. People I've learned over the years have to be in almost a vacation frame of mind to buy art. Or they just got a new house, or they're looking for a piece. So when you go to Saugatuck, you can go to different galleries, and you can kind of
You're getting the people.
you're getting away from your job, even if it's for the day.
Right.
So I didn't do a lot of retail in the Waters building because people are working. They're working. I said, come on in. You've walked by here for 10 years and you never come in. Come in.
Yeah.
Oh, I'll do it tomorrow.
Yeah.
It's like
Yeah.
so. Retail and art's really tough.
Yeah.
Retail in any business is tough, I
Right.
think. But
So you found Saugatuck, which is a very artistic town. You just found that more welcoming. It's a resort town.
Yeah.
It's something where people would come in and look.
yeah, and it's and I did that for 3 years. I was with my friend John Klein. Him and I had the gallery together in the Dockside Market, and I pretty much ran the show. It was, he didn't like to be out meeting people all the time. So.
And that was a studio also there for you?
Well, yeah, it was. Yeah, I had my easel there and my paints, and it's the same thing in Italy. When I would go over there, I've got all my stuff in a place, so it's more of an outdoor working space that I can work there.
Yeah, and your style of working has changed a bit because you started off probably in your basement, very
Yeah.
isolated.
Yep.
You kind of moved to all right, you're in a storefront and you're doing it with people walking past.
Right.
And now you throw a backpack on with your stuff in it and you just go.
Yeah.
So
It's back and forth,
yeah.
because when when I do want to go to Italy or to Europe to see my friends and get
Yeah.
back to the hometown of St. Francis,
Yeah.
you know, I might do some watercolors over there.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, it's a little more freer and just relaxing for myself, and not like a commission piece or a deadline.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because you need, as a creative person, you know, that needs to be fed.
And I need to
know,
break.
that-
I need to take breaks too.
Right. Because for, you know, for most artists, when they're doing their art on their own and not necessarily a commissioned piece, it's like a meditation, you know,
Exactly.
where you're getting relaxation. It's giving you back more than you're putting into it, you know. And even with commission pieces, you love them and they're still your work,
Right.
but yet there's more energy that has to be put into it.
It's different,
and
yeah. Because it's someone else's idea sometimes.
So you didn't really get interested in art until later. Like as a kid, what was your creative? Because you've probably always been a creative person. So what was
Yeah.
your creative outlet as a kid?
Sports.
Yeah,
Yeah,
really.
Yeah. Yeah. Actually, I learned a lot of my marketing, my business sense through sports. Being competitive, being respectful of. I remember my dad saying, you know, after I played hockey, I played golf, hockey, and baseball in high school. But after every hockey game, my dad said, go up and don't just congratulate the players, also shake the hand of the opposing coach. So that was
Networking and yeah.
That's like introducing myself.
Yeah.
They know who I am. You know, it's like, why is no other player goes up and shakes the other coach's hand, or maybe they did. I didn't pay attention, but
Probably not.
So they got to know me. So that's how I, you know, I think when I look back in retrospect, that's maybe how I learned some of my business skills, by being a people person and not being, you know, just, hi, my name's Mick, you know.
Right.
So.
Right.
It's-
So as a kid, you really didn't have like a creative
No.
streak. Like I
I did drawings, you know, one
Yeah.
or two drawings a year just for myself.
Oh, yeah. Huh.
But
'Cause I have 4 kids, and my
Okay.
youngest is the artist.
Okay.
And literally, like, starting in about 18 months, she always had a pen or a pencil in her hand.
Okay.
And like she couldn't draw anything, but she would sit at the table, and she was so precise with how it just looked like scribbles, but she was so precise with it. And then she'd fall asleep, and I'd try to move her, and then she'd wake up and panic, like, oh no, I'm not done. And she's a very good artist for her age. She's 9. But for her, like, it was clearly just in her,
Right.
you know. And her 3 older sisters, like, no art at all. One of them, when she started watching anime, when she was like 13,
Okay.
she started drawing anime characters, and now she's really into that.
Yeah.
So for her, it was that inspiration
Sure.
for her. So I always think about, like, I mean, for me, creativity is in writing and things like that. Like, I'm not a work with my hands person or painting or anything
there's
like that.
all-
I can appreciate it,
Right.
but I'm like, that's really great that somebody can do that. Like, it interests me not at all to do myself.
Yeah, I mean, there's people that don't appreciate art too. They just aren't wired that way.
I have a lot of friends who are artists, so I think it's helped me,
Yeah,
you know, look at things differently and appreciate them differently.
it is interesting to learn how, you know, techniques are done. You know,
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Because I mean, I know in some ways, like with this, you mentioned with the table that you painted, you mentioned, you know, I don't want to really talk about the details much because I want to see what other people see.
yeah, I mean, this kind of style. I mean, if it's a landscape, it's a landscape.
Yeah,
You know, I mean,
yeah.
I have read, you know, I've gone to museums and there's an artist statement about this landscape. You know, I'm going, well, I'm glad they made all this stuff up, and I'm not saying that they didn't mean any of that, but I didn't need to read that.
Yeah.
Because I want to get what I get out of it. Because to me, it's green fields. But I mean, there's been artist statements about a white painting. I felt, you know, and I've just never been that kind of person that can write a paragraph about a white painting.
Right.
I'd be like, I need to do something to it.
Yeah.
It's white.
So when you do something like this, you know, do you think about, wow, people are really going to notice this? Or I wonder, you know, like the you know, the holes
Yeah.
in his hands. I forgot what you called that.
Stigmata.
Yeah, stigmata. You know, do you look at it, or as you're sculpting it, or as you're working on it, you're like, oh, well, I hope, you know,
No.
I think they'll really notice his eyes or the way his ear is formed, or, you know, are there things like that that you're sort of like, oh, I think this is going to really make a difference in this sculpture?
Not so much in the sculptures. I mean, there are some hidden things I put in. Sometimes I'll hide some, you know, like faces that I don't. But I just kind of do that to see if people see it. I don't like point it out. And then there's other times that I'll create something, and then there's things that I didn't even intend that would show up. But people don't like to hear that.
Oh, that it wasn't intentional.
Yeah.
That it was accidental.
So that's why a lot of times I just go, oh, you like that, huh?
Yeah.
Especially if they're a buyer, right? If
You're
they're
very
thinking, okay.
perceptive.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, so I mean, it all depends if I'm giving a lecture or if I'm like, I mean, so sometimes I do hide things in there, you know, and just kind of make things out of other things. But I don't usually think of what people are going to think of it.
Or what they'll notice.
Well, yeah, I mean, I guess there's things that, you know, I want them to notice, like the texture. You know, you can see the texture
Of the
like,
robe.
Yeah. Where this one's more smooth, but this one I've got like a burlap texture. So, I would, when people do notice that, I appreciate it.
Okay. Yeah, because even looking at these, and I'm so close to it, but one of the things that jumped out at me is their hollow eyes because I'm so close to it, and I'm like, oh, they're like,
yeah, and there's
no
different,
eyeballs.
and that's a technique that I've done differently, because sometimes I'll have a pupil in the middle, where this one it's very subtle, like this one it's very subtle back there, but you know, and then if you look at some of the Greek sculptures back in time, it's just the roundness of your eye, and there's no circle or any of that. And to me, that was just always like, they have no pupils, there's no eyes, and they're just
like
kinda,
it doesn't show the soul, or it doesn't show the humanness in them.
Yeah, and maybe that's what they meant back then. But so there's, you know, just different ways to do eyes. And when you're away and you look at it from a distance too, then
It
you
looks
get,
more like the person. Yeah. So when you're like, if you're talking to someone who's an artist that's hoping to make it their career, what is it that you emphasize to them?
Stop now. Don't even try.
Don't do it. Go get an accounting degree.
But there is a lot of math. I mean, there is a lot of visual math in sculpting and, and painting.
Physics.
Like,
and,
yeah. So, but my advice, you know, if I'm going to be Mr. Nice Guy, or if I'm going to be Mr. Honest Guy.
Let's be Mr. Honest Guy.
Or if the parents are there with,
Okay,
if it's a younger, so there's
person,
different,
yeah.
there's different.
Okay, let's be like, okay, somebody's determined to pursue this, and they're like, I want to make this my life. I want to live off of my art. Like, what is it that you're gonna tell them? I mean, for example, when I talk to people going into broadcast or into news, which has been my background, I've done public relations, I've done news, and I tell them, I'm like, broadcasting can be great. You know, it can be so much fun. You get a lot of diversity. You get a lot of, your hands are in a lot of different things. But I tell them, don't go into it for the money, because the money's not there most of the time. Like, go into it because it's your passion, and you can't imagine doing anything else. So that's typically my advice for them on that, and I talk about networking and stuff too. But for you, if somebody's like, this is what I'm doing, how do you try to help them with some of the lessons you had to learn, and maybe give them a little head start on how to do it right?
I mean, there is the philosophy, if you discourage somebody and they can get through your discouragement, then they're worth encouraging. But that's, and you know, not being a parent, that I could see that being tough for a parent. Discouraging your child to like your daughter. Did you say your daughter?
She's not,
like saying,
it's an artist,
no, you're not doing that anymore. But she's still determined to do it, and then you keep being on her, like I said no, and they keep doing it, then maybe there's, but that, I can see that being really tough for a parent nowadays, because parents are always like, oh, everything you do, you know, I see it, you know. But for
I'm
me,
more like, go for it, but you better figure out how you're going to live off of that. Like, when you graduate from college, you should have a job where you can pay for your own apartment. Like, that's my expectation. So.
Well, I think anything you have to, if you say you're going to do something, you got to do it. And if you can't, you better explain why you can't do it. You know, if it's a business deal, if it's if you're doing something for a friend, like if somebody or a relative says, "Hey, will you do me a picture of my dog or something?" And then you say, "Sure," and then you don't do it, that just is, it's not good. You gotta always do that. You know, you just, if you say you're gonna do it, I don't care what it is, you do it. You know, even if you think it's not your best work, you have to. You can't back away from your word. And I think that goes. You know, it's life. You should live that way. But
which maybe for some more creative personalities, that's a little tougher sometimes.
Yeah.
Because I think creative people, you know,
it was only
like
$100.
to flow with life, like to, you know, that sort of thing. Yeah.
Yeah. It's only $100. So.
Yeah.
Well, you told me you were going to do this, and even though you think it was only $100, it was an agreement we had.
Yeah. Yeah.
So.
And some of the things that have surprised you about the business or you didn't expect to go into, you've mentioned fundraising. You didn't really expect to get into fundraising for some of your projects.
Right.
Is there anything else that's really jumped out at you as like, I didn't really expect to do this, even like the negotiations and?
You know, for doing it for 20 years, I've always kind of been smart enough to document my work, and so that was always, you know, good because. It's documented for history reasons. It's documented because I can make prints of it. I can sell more when I'm not selling an original. I've got prints I can sell. So I mean, as far as, you know, and then there's you know, I know a little bit of Photoshop and I know a little bit of working on my website, but then I haven't worked on my website for years because I started doing more Facebook stuff because it was easier. And my web designer. He went away because life's changed, and do I spend all this money on getting my website, and then delegation of getting all my images is going to take me away from creating, so now I don't know how to do that website as good anymore.
Yeah.
So there's all those factors that go into it. Being surprised at some stuff, I don't know if I can think of anything right now, just because it's you just have to deal with it when it comes.
Because you're not just an artist. I mean, you're a business owner.
Yeah.
So you have to get into all these aspects.
Oh, taxes. That's what sneaks up on. What? Yeah. What? No, I worked hard. Come on.
Right.
But
well, also being an individual business owner and all of that, the taxes are different. Yeah. And you gotta, you know, they're done quarterly, aren't they? Yeah. So it's a lot of paperwork with that.
So yeah, it's like I say, it's a roller coaster ride, but I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Right, which I think is what most artists would say. You know, and you've done so many different types of things. You know, sculptures and painting and sculpture paintings and different types of paintings and different, you know, and all of that. So what do you see ahead of you? Because you have left some things behind. Like you mentioned how the Elton John. What'd you call it?
Oh, you mean
not a sculpture painting, but that's pretty much
just a regular painting.
A hanging sculpture. Like that was initially inspired by just a painting you'd done, and then when HopCat asked you to do that, you were like, I'm really not doing that anymore.
Because he even said, he goes, and I could have done this. He says, "Oh man, it's good money. Just spend a couple weeks, you know, get it done. It's good money, and they'll be in Chicago." And I thought about it. I'm like, you know what? I can't do that.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna just do it for the money because of that style, even though they like that style, and I should be happy they like that style. But I'm like, no, I'm going for it here. You know, I want to do something unique, different. I want to keep striving for that new thing that maybe hasn't been done.
Right. Yeah. And you stretched your wings and you came up with this.
Yeah.
So where do you see things going then? Because what have you let go of in the sense of, you know, have you let go of doing the flat paintings for the most part, or portraits, or those sort of things?
I don't know if I've let go of it, but I've definitely moved beyond it. And I guess it's all semantics, but you know, I still, you know, I love working, doing, you know, I'd love to do some big sculptures at St. Francis. It's amazing how many sculptures I've done at St. Francis, and I haven't done any big ones.
So this is the biggest you've done?
No, I've done one of Christ at the Pillar in Jenison,
But not of St. Francis.
Not of St.
though.
Francis.
Like, so in the sense of St. Francis, these are the sizes that you've
This
gone
is
to.
Christ and the Children over
okay.
there.
Oh, yeah.
And that's a model for a big piece I'm going to be working on.
Oh, okay, cool.
Here in Grand Rapids. And the one for in Jenison is the one standing behind of Christ. So
Right
that was
here.
a model. So
Yeah.
that's a small one I did. And then I did the 7 foot of that one.
Oh, okay.
So a lot of times when I work, with these churches or businesses, they'll say, well, we want this big sculpture, so I'll do a drawing. And then from there I'll do a small sculpture.
Right, so that's what you did with these right here, and they're showing them right now. So first you drew them,
Yep.
and then you,
Then I just create the small
molded 'em,
sculpture
yep.
out of clay, and then make molds of them, and then recast them for the church. And so we sit down with the committee, and they look at it, and they go, okay, we like this, we like that. Can you change this? Can you do that? And then from there, then they have to raise the money for the big statue, and that can take a year. I mean,
Right,
or longer.
Right, that's a lot of
Yeah.
that's a lot of bronze.
So there is a lot of that patience. There's a lot of patience in what I do.
Right.
Of people saying, well, we're going to do this, and it's going to take a month, and it takes 3 years.
Right.
So, and you just have to grit your teeth and get through it.
And from a business perspective, like something like this, they would essentially pay you in stages. So you're like, all right, we're going to start by, I'll do this, we'll get to the bronze.
Yeah.
Small statue, and that's
Yep.
this much.
And
Because I can't see you doing all this work and then having to wait 3 years until finally the big one comes up.
Yeah, I mean, usually when the business side of it is I usually get a third down, and then when they approve it, they give me another third.
Okay.
And then when after it's cast in bronze and finished, then I get the final payment.
Okay, yeah.
It's a little bit different with the soldiers because I was really working with them because they were like raising money, so they were giving me a little bit at a time. So
As they could, yeah.
and I pride myself on working that way with people.
Right.
Trying to not just let me know when you get the money. I'm here to help too if I can make connections.
Right. You've had influence, I think, especially with your religious paintings or your religious sculptures. You have influence, emotional influence, I think, with like the soldiers and the police officers. Your influence is going into the rock and roll community.
I've always done rock star paintings, and so it was it was a good hand and glove fit when HopCat got a hold of me because I've already kind of done a series of rock stars over the years because they've inspired me. Their music inspires me, so it's giving back, I guess.
Right. So how do you you're doing these pieces and you see how they impact people, and one of your pieces is in the Vatican. For these people are going to be sitting in HopCat in Chicago, and it'll be part of their experience of eating there. When these become statues of the fallen soldiers, that'll be a very emotional experience for people. Do you feel like artists have a role in society that can't be filled otherwise? Is it, and certainly art in education and things like those have all been very controversial things, and if money gets cut, a lot of times art programs get it. What is the influence here that's important that we can't get anywhere else, Or is it just something on the wall that looks cool while they're drinking their beer?
Yeah, I mean, these pieces, for HopCat, I'm when I get the wow factors, I'm yes, when I wow, I like that. It's different than someone might go, wow, that's cool, St. Francis, How do you make his nose look like that, or how do you get him to make it such a natural smile, But it's a different calmness, I guess, that I get from these colorful things, and being in a bar atmosphere. As far as artists, art, I think it's a lot of artists get discouraged because people don't ever take them for their value. It's really hard you really have to have thick skin to get through the fact that, someone wants to pay you very little for your work. It's, and then there's lawyers that charge so much money per hour that they're not even doing the work. And I'm not taking anything away, saying I'm taking anything away from their profession, but they kind of look at like, oh, you know, that's how much do you have in material? You're charging $20,000 and you only got $100 in materials. I'm like, well, it's 20 years of my career.
Right.
You know,
it's the experience that goes into it, and it's the time. Yeah, it's all of that.
So, you know, so when you are out there in the public like I am, and if you have an open gallery, you are gonna, it's a learning experience to meet so many different personalities and how someone might look at you different, or, you know, and then you just, you know, I've gotten angry, and that how people just either they take you for granted, and I could be having a bad day, or they could be having a bad day. So that's why a lot of artists, I mean, that's why they started making galleries, or not making galleries, but opening up art galleries in France in the salons, because most artists just want to create. They don't want to sell. That's too close.
It's the business.
I don't want someone to say I don't like my work,
right.
or how come you did it like this, or I love your work, but I'm getting it for somebody else, or, you know, because artists are so sensitive.
Yeah. It's that creative thing.
Yeah. But I've always enjoyed people, even though it can be tough sometimes when you are out there and selling like that.
Yeah, yeah. And it's unusual, I think. I mean, your work has evolved, you know, where you started more with paintings, and it's evolved quite a bit. I think it's unusual to see an artist who has such a diversity, you know, who has religious statues, you know, religious sculptures, and, you know, paintings of rock stars, and, you know, it's just, and the Grand Rapids thing, and the painted glass of just sort of what it feels like right now. You know, it's nothing specific, it's very abstract. And
I've always prided myself on that.
Yeah,
know,
it seems atypical to me. Is it?
Well, yeah, I've been praised and criticized at the same time. Well, you don't have a style. Well,
yeah.
And other people go, you have a style. I'm like, well, I just want to keep trying to find that new thing. You know, it's not that I get bored with it. I mean, I guess you could say I get bored with that style and I move on, and maybe I come back to it.
Or you incorporate it into something,
right.
Into something new. Yeah.
Yeah. So just to be the guy who does the landscapes, or the guy who does the portraits, I just, it's just the way my journey's gone.
Yeah.
And I've never thought that I was doing anything wrong, but there are, when you see some artists get on something and that's what they like, and good for them. That's what they like, and it's made some of them very successful. And maybe they are very successful, but they can't do a sculpture, or vice versa. You know, they could do a sculpture, but they had no idea how to use color, and stuff like that. So I'm very thankful that I got a strong work ethic, and that I love to create.
Love to explore.
Yeah, and it's a balance of life, you know. There's so much goes into my work that is done before I even start working on it. If it's not sleeping at night and thinking about how am I going to do this next day, or if it's on my journeys of the people I meet, the influences I have in my life that get soaked in to my soul. Some of it's obvious, some of it is just there. It's what I've breathed in throughout my journeys. Yeah.
So you're really influenced by what's around you, really. I mean, the people you meet, like, do you think about things like current events? You know, I mean, certainly we have things like terrorism and, you know, some really negative stuff. We have a presidential election, which is
actually, I'm working on a piece right now.
Frightening and
getting to your.
Yeah.
I'm working on I did an international peace statue of St. Francis. So, speaking of which, it's a large St. Francis. I forgot about it.
Oh, yay!
And I'm working on it right now. But I did it for myself. It wasn't a commission piece. So
right, it was just something for you. You're like, this is in me. It needs to come out. Yeah.
And it's Francis leaping over the world. And right now, my heart is breaking in so many ways for the people in Italy in this sudden earthquake that there's no control over. You just can't.
Yeah.
And we had a tornado here in town that scared people, and people lost, you know, things. And then with all, like you said, the terrorism, the political stuff that's going on, it's got people just in this. You know, you
the
watch
racism, all the.
Oh, you know, and all with the police officers. You know, back and forth, and the guns.
And that's become worse. I mean, this is someone who died in the line of duty maybe
Yeah.
5, 6, 7 years ago.
Yeah, yeah. Just
You
a
know.
domestic issue. He was just going up because two people were fighting, and I think the sniper took him out.
Yeah.
Just shot him walking out.
Yeah, but now it's so much more targeted between police and all.
I know
You know,
it.
it's
Yeah.
yeah. So how do you find that? Like, it's art is emotional work. You know, obviously your emotions go into it somehow. So are these things being incorporated in it?
Yeah,
Well,
right now it is. I'm working on this piece, and it's Francis leaping over the world with an olive branch, and his robe is just full of different color patches. Because he used to have patches, like he probably had 2 gowns his whole life, so you got to like repair it.
Right, right.
So I've got this colorful, and he's leaping over the world.
This is a sculpture?
Yeah.
Okay.
And it's going to be, we're going to have it out at Marywood for the International Day of Peace coming up in September.
Yeah. Oh, so you're,
Yeah, and so
this has got to be done soon.
people can write messages of peace on the world. Yeah.
Wow. Oh.
Yeah, it's going to be really cool.
What's it going to be made of?
Well, it's made out of similar materials, but
Not bronze, or like the bronze resin stuff?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, not real bronze. I'd love to have it cast in bronze and put it at Marywood permanently.
Yeah.
But that's got to find the right donor for that.
Yeah, so you're talking about colorful patches. So is it,
Yeah.
you're painting them, you're
It's
like,
going to be
how
real
is-
colorful like this, and
Oh,
it's going
it's
to be
gonna be-
Francis. It's going to be so
Wow.
cool.
Wow.
But it's going to represent just, all of us just trying to get along, just
Yeah.
from different countries, different races,
Huh.
different religions, just, I want people to not just see it as, this Catholic saint or Francis, I want him to be the ambassador of peace, So,
What's his face look like in that?
well, yeah, they all are similar, but they vary because I don't get too caught up in
Expression.
yeah, and like these small statues, there's different areas. He was at this age, and then as he grew older and was out in nature all the time, he get the wear and tear of the elements. But he's got a smile on his face, big smile, big optimist.
Yeah, so just the optimism
Yeah.
of trying to help the world move forward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
But I've modeled his face over a good friend of mine who lives in Nuremberg, Germany. So it's a whole other story, but it's
Yeah.
it's an amazing
So
story.
this is based on the face is your friend in Germany,
Yeah.
essentially.
Yeah,
huh?
I dressed him up like Francis, and he let
Wow.
me shave the top of his head. I'm talking 10,
Yeah, well, it had to be a
12
while
years.
ago.
Yeah. It was so funny.
And how did you decide on that? Like, that is one thing. Like, what is out there, Francis? Obviously, no photographs.
No, there's
so
a
it's all
couple
based
drawings back to the
yeah.
13th century, and some descriptions in books. I've portrayed him a little bit probably taller than some of the descriptions of him. But yeah, I met this guy from Germany. He was on vacation here, and when I had a gallery in Saugatuck, and it's a cool 20-minute story. Him and I just became brothers, and now Susan and I are godparents of their children,
Cool,
and they're
yeah.
twins, a girl and a boy.
Wow.
And he named them Francis and Elias.
Oh, wow.
And Elias is one of Francis's followers.
Yeah.
And the girl's name is Francis.
Oh,
Yeah,
huh.
so it's a boy and a girl, blonde and brunette.
Yeah.
And so we tried to get back there. We just went for their confirmation. But he just had that look I was looking for, but it was his soul. I mean, we just had this connection. He was telling me this story on my front porch after we just knew each other for about a half hour, and he started crying.
Oh.
I'm like, I hardly know this guy. And he's telling me a story, and he's crying. And
He's putting it out there, man.
I just said, hey, will you
Just
be my
like
model?
Francis,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. So we've been to Assisi together, just the two of us, and I dressed him up like Francis, made him take his sandals off and walk barefoot because Francis did that. And he's like, what? You're going to make me walk? And I'm like, yeah. So we walked the streets of
You're like,
Assisi,
get to it, dude.
went
Yeah.
up in the mountains where Francis lived. He's like, ooh, ah, ah, ah. But after about a half hour, he just was like walking, like he was walking on air. And he came back and he said, I have to thank you for making me take off my shoes. I just felt the whole energy of Francis and God and earth coming right through me. Then I was jealous. I didn't take my shoes off.
Yeah,
'Cause
yeah.
I'm following with 2 cameras. This is before digital. I had like black and white film on this camera and color on
Right.
this and a video camera.
Yeah.
So I documented him in different expressions, and that's how I started doing paintings of Francis, and then the paintings led to the sculptures.
So at the time, you weren't planning on the sculptures. At the time when you went
No.
on this walk and made your friend walk barefoot through
Nope.
the mountains.
No, I wasn't even sculpting then.
Yeah. Yeah. How did it turn into sculpting?
Just another friend of mine was into sculpting, John Klein, where we had the gallery in Saugatuck, and he gave me a piece of clay and wax to work with, and I did a little sculpture of a golfer.
Mm-hmm.
Just kind of animated, just kind of awful. No. No,
But
it's
it was
all
your first.
right. Yeah.
Yeah, and so the process for you to go from a flat surface to a much more tactile 3D.
Yeah.
You know, obviously you don't like your first little golfer that you did, but you know, how did you do this? What were your frustrations with it? Or like, you know, you have a vision in your head, like you're painting, you know, but it doesn't look like that. So how come his nose isn't working out like this? Like, what
Yeah.
are some of the things you had to go through to get there? Because really, was Francis your first series essentially, or your first
Pretty much,
real,
yeah.
real sculptures? You know,
Yeah.
the golf guy, it sounds like, was playing around. So this was, you know, how was that process for you?
It is a process. I mean, that's, you know, I look back at some of my first sculptures. I thought when I did them, they were pretty cool. And now I look, I'm like, man, that finger's not even close to right. You know, I mean, so, you know, I just want to get better at what I'm doing. I want to physically see it. And there is a process that I've gone through looking back at the sculptures I did in 2004 to the ones that I do now. That when I did these 16 bronze statues for the Basilica, I was on a timeline. I was getting them done. I'm like, wow, you know, it's like I didn't have time to think if it was, you know, the hand to the elbow and the elbow to the shoulder is all in the right dimension. And so they were cool. They were full of energy. They were still hot when I got them to Italy, and it was just, wow, what an experience. And then after the next couple of years of, you know, looking at those sculptures, like, man, I can make that better. I can make that better. And Susan would say, will you stop it? You know, quit, you know, and I'm just, but it's just what I do. You know, I look at stuff and I go, wow, okay, I didn't see that when I did it. And so I kind of went through a phase where I'm like, you know, I changed the color on some of them, and I think I wish I wouldn't have done that. You know, things I've changed. And I've done that to some paintings. I went back in and changed a painting, and I'm like, I should have never changed it. So it's almost like if I don't look at it for a while and I come back and revisit it, and I'm like, oh, that's cool. That's just like so, you know, you can make things too realistic where it doesn't become art anymore. You know, doesn't have that feeling. So if I mean, you go to the Renaissance and you see all these great sculptures and they're just perfect, but they're art. But if you go to Romance Garden or somewhere and you see a sculpture of St. Francis that's been, you don't look at it as art. You look at it as a garden statue, or, you know, or religious statues or all those mass-produced stuff. You just like, oh, that's cool. I mean, there's so many different themes that you see that people have these little sculptures that you don't really see in the sculptures. You see them as an ornate. But if you really look at, like, wow, that's a nice bird, or that's a nice angel, or a butterfly that someone might have in their house as a decoration. But it's actually someone sculpted that.
Is St. Francis the one that people bury in their yards to sell their
No,
house?
it's St. Joseph, I think.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
okay.
yeah. So there's that aspect of trying not to overwork it.
Right.
You know, getting to a point you're like, yeah, it doesn't, you know.
And I'm a writer, and I can do that with editing, you know, where every time I read something, it's hard for me to finalize anything, because every time I read it, I'm finding something to change. You know, because your brain works differently, or you're focusing on different things.
Sign it and get done with it. Move
Yeah.
on, another piece, another poem, another writer. I mean, whatever you're writing.
Yeah, yeah.
Sometimes. And then other people, when you're writing, I'm sure, see things and you're like, God, I didn't see that.
Yeah. So what are you playing with now that maybe will show up in your future pieces?
The St. Francis piece I'm working on now, I'm doing something totally different. Just happened this last week.
Oh, yeah.
With the
Where it's going to be more interactive. Is that the aspect that's new, or is there something else where people will be able to sign it and write
Yeah,
on it?
you can draw on it and erase it and put magnets on it. And try not to say too much. Maybe it'll glow in the dark. I don't know. It'll be a spirit at night. Francis leaping over the world. But I don't know.
Put a speaker in it, people push a button, and Francis will say, like, Francis-like phrases.
Yeah.
I don't know what he would say, but.
So I mean, that's where do you draw the line with that stuff? If you're making something cool and fun that people are getting a joy out of, and someone might think that that's super corny. Mm-hmm. I don't know.
Right.
I just want to make people happy. And I want to be happy. So.
Yeah. And do you think that, like Art Prize, which is the huge international art festival here, do you feel like that's a great thing for artists, for art in general, for the art community? Like I said, my friend who's the graffiti artist, the fine art dude now, like I've talked to him about Art Prize, and he's like, I don't do anything where I have to submit something. Like for him, he's like, the museum comes to me and says, I want this. He's like, that's what I do. So for him, he doesn't think Art Prize is like a good thing or a big deal. Like he's just like, whatever. You know? But how do you feel it is in bringing art in front of people and creating an appreciation for art?
I think it's a great, I think it's a wonderful thing for the city. I think they've listened to too many critics, and I really like how things were like the first few years. How it's up to the people to judge, because it educates them and it gets them thinking about art, even if it's for 3 weeks out of the year. It's a free event. They can come from all over the world.
They do come from all over the world,
and it gives artists, creative people, if you're an artist or if you're just a creative person, and just because you can make something, I don't think makes you an artist. Makes, that's a whole nother discussion. But so that's why I say I'm a painter and sculptor, because I don't have to say I'm an artist. But it's, but if you're creative and you make something that you want to show to people, that you have to put yourself out there for opinions, and so it's tough for a lot of people. I don't know how to hang. I know how to paint it, but I don't know how to hang it on a wall.
Right. There's a lot involved with that.
Yeah,
how
and
to
it seems so
present
simple,
it.
but like, how do I do that? Well, you get a ladder and a nail, and here, let me help you. Boom. Okay, you're done. You know. But I've been doing it so long, it's just easy for me to do that kind of stuff.
But there's a lot with, and I never realized this until I've talked to my friends who are artists, and a lot of them have been in Art Prize, and just talking about, well, they do their piece, but then it needs to be, it's expected to be hung on the wall at a certain level, and it needs to be lit a certain way. And there's a lot involved with just making sure that it's presented in the right way. Because if you have a painting that's near a bright sunny area versus having it in the back, where it's sort of dark and just like the overhead lights, I mean, it's going to be perceived a lot differently.
Yeah, there's a lot of cool stuff that people do. I mean, it's amazing, some of the, and you can't get to everything. I mean, over 1,500 contestants, and it's tough. I mean, and
but
you
it's
really
a great
have to
festival. I love taking my kids down to it because they always find something to just look at. And
so to one person, that one might be silly and not a piece of art, and to someone else, it might be a piece of art.
Yeah.
So I mean. Yeah.
Huh. Cool. Well, thank you so much for coming.
We're done already?
Yeah, we are. See, did I tell you? Doesn't it go fast? What? 2 hours already? But I want to make sure if people want to get a hold of you or they want to see your work, where are the best places for them to go to do that? I know you have a website, but do you feel like there's another area that's better?
Yeah. I mean, I have Micasso.com that kind of shows a catalog, but that hasn't been updated in a while.
Micasso, which is spelled like Picasso, but with an M. Micasso.com.
And I have MickCarlson.com. But I mean, Facebook nowadays, I mean, I've got a couple Facebook pages. I have a Mick Carlson gallery that needs more work, but those are places that you can always find my phone number or email to get a hold of me if you want me to come and create some for you.
And do you do any, like you mentioned, sort of teaching and things like that? Do you give speeches? Do you give talks, that kind of thing?
Yep, I've done lectures, talks for 20 people to 200 people on my journey with mostly St. Francis.
Right, yeah, that's a pretty big deal.
Yeah, and if anybody ever wants to come to the Sculpture Garden at Marywood, I'd be happy to give them a private tour. it's
awesome.
anytime.
I'll keep that in mind. That's in my pocket now. I have to impress my kids to show them I'm cool because I know cool people.
Oh, you have to
They're like,
bring-
"You're not cool, Mom." I'm like, "I am cool because cool people think I'm cool." They're like, "No." They're like, "Those are old cool people." I'm like, "All right."
A little bit.
Okay. Thank you so much for coming.